Good morning. In the last couple of lectures, dealt in detail Sankhya's 25 elements and also relevant suktas of Rigveda 10th mandala on the related to the physics, particularly a creation of the universe. It has been established that there is a good scientific relation between energy and the matter, and both are convertible. And Einstein equation E is equal to mc square, much before that itself, Veda has explained about this phenomena. Now, I would like to share something further on this through the slides. So I request you to kindly watch the slides carefully when I'm talking. So let me present with slides and carefully watch the slides along with my talk. In a previous lecture, we have looked into the energy and matter conversion in Vedic science and its correlation with Albert Einstein's energy equation. Now, let us look into the ancient Indian energy conversion and the management approach. So, this is what topic today I am going to talk. Here, let me give a little bit of introduction before we could go into detail of the subject. The Mother Nature has abundant source of energy. The ancient Indian scientists of Vedic period gave a great importance to harness the energy given by the Mother Earth. They always emphasized the importance of the renewable energy, whereas in modern science, we exploit the energy of the mother nature, and some of the energies like gasoline are getting drained out. In this lecture, effort has been made to recompile the works of various researchers, scholars, authors, and philosophers and correlate their finding to the current state of energy science and technologies. Before focusing the review on ancient energy, science, and technology, it needs to look into the culture and philosophy of the science existed in Vedic period. Rishis, who were also the scientists of the Vedic period, they always believed that real progress and welfare of the country or civilization depends upon the jnana, that is the knowledge, and vijnana. This is also true to happy upliftment of the person or a society. Lack or negligence on either front of results into the degradation and a decline. Jnana means that which generate and expands enlightenment, discerning the wisdom, farsightedness, benevolence, generosity, justice, integrity, alertness, and sense of responsibility. Vijnana is that which initiate and promotes materialistic progress, capabilities, talents, power, resources, prosperity, and worldly success. Mutual coherence and simultaneous growth and expansion of both jnana and vijnana is account of a truly fulfilling, a durable progress and ascent of life. Both had flourished in India in Vedic age. This is why Vedic era is glorified as a golden age in the history of mankind. A suitable balance of both jnana and vijnana was present everywhere in a Vedic Indian society. Shastric scriptures mention in detail supernatural, a potential, tools, aircraft, weaponry, etc., that had been developed and used in ancient India. Rishi used to engage in devout spiritual practices and trance meditation for soul realization and refinement of the sublime environment for the welfare of living being. They also possessed a supernatural scientific talents and capabilities like Ashtasiddhis, Navasiddhis, using which they could acquire a supernatural success, including space travel and extraterrestrial communication, and generate any amount and any kind of resources as and when they wished, and they were genuinely required for the collective good. The process of civilization has been continuous movement of physical discovery and experience related over and over in the society and gradually formulated distilled as a mental knowledge. It is the movement from below to upwards, from the physical to mental, a movement of unconscious or subconscious learning, maturing in the a conscious knowledge. Development of the science has followed the same course. Modern science broke down the confining the limitations of the superstition and religion by intense observation and experimentation with the material phenomena, leading to concepts and theories which appear directly contradict those propagated by the religion of the day. The development of a technology, the improvement in instrumentation for observation and measurement made the scientific revolution possible. A physical observation, experimentation, and technical innovation have been a primary tools of a modern science. The present day science isolated and eliminated all that was immediately not immediately verifiable or measurable through the physical instrumentation because of the limitation of such a gadgets or invention of such a gadgets as on day. As a result, science has been able to uncover the mechanism governing many material phenomena, but it has not succeeded in discovering underlying reality and the process of creating which governs all the phenomena in a mother nature. Vedic rishis worked in a opposite direction from above, that is downwards, raising and expanding their powers of the consciousness, then they directed that consciousness to eliminate the reality of the nature. They discovered the underlying reality from which all the phenomena are created. See, Aurobindo says this discovery is of a great practical significance to the world than that the discovery is made by the modern scientists like Newton's. The ancient rishis and great had a great understanding of the unified field of all the laws of nature. These laws of nature were extensively used to create various forms energy or shakti for the benefit of the mankind. Rishi used some of the energy for destructive purposes, basically in weapons, weapon systems, and for safeguarding the kingdom or a dharma. There is a considerable research is being done by the Maharishi International University, USA, in linking up the modern science and Vedic science. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi has brought to the light the knowledge of ancient science and integrated it with the modern science in such a way that Vedic science and the modern science are now seen as a complementary methods of gaining the knowledge of the same reality, unified field of all the laws of nature. In the Vedic literature, There are many descriptions in application of various forms of energy. Bharadwaj Rishi, which is Vaimanika Shastra, and Amshabodhini highlighted the various forms of Shakti or power used for functioning of the aircraft in its flight, and other operative modes to achieve the desired effects of motion. This is what in the Yantra Sarvasva groups, the power into seven categories of each of them have been described here. Tundala, it is Ugama Shakti, Udgama Shakti. Panjara is the Panjara Shakti. Amshopa is the solar power absorption. And like that, see the different kind of Shakti has been defined, powers have been defined there. From the available literature, it is evident that Vedic scientists have been has used exhaustible energy. From the available literature, it is evident that Vedic scientists have used exhaustible energies and renewable energies in the aircraft system, weapons, and other yantras. Some of these are reviewed here in in one of the literature which was published way back in 1956. Dr. V. Raghavan, a former professor of Sanskrit in Madras University, has brought out the brief treatise of this aspect of it. In his booklet, the author has dealt with the subject of yantra and different powers used for yantra. Some of the yantras mentioned in his booklet highlights the use of the hydraulic and pneumatic power, such as Ghati yantra, that is a water pulley, and Taila yantra, that is oil pressure, and Iksu yantra, that is a cane pressure, and water jet mechanism for fire pinching, etc. The technology of water pulley is well known to them, hence, they were also aware of using hydraulic power for generating electrical energy. Bharat Rishi's Vaimanak Shastra, the various types of Imana have been described. For each type of Imana, various sources of energies are used for a propulsion as well as other controlling yantras or the devices. Some of them are reviewed here for a better understanding of the knowledge of energy science existed in the Vedic period. The Shakuna Vimana contains 28 parts. They are pithas or floorboard, hollow mast, three-wheeled kilakasha, and four heater in air suction pipes, water jacket, oil tank or air heater, steam boiler, and Vidyut yantra, that is electric generator, and air propelling yantras, and Vatapi yantra or air suction pipes, and Dik Pradarshana and Dvaja Shakuna yantras, and that is and two wings and tail portion, and these are the various. Then there is engine, no, which is described here. For air compressors are provided around the bottom of the hollow mast. Air compressors are supposed to be driven by the steam power, which is very strange. Similarly, for Sundar Imana descriptions also highlights the use of a gas engine, wind blower, chimney, four-phased heater, electricity generator, and etc. In the center of the pitha, that is Dhuma Prasarana Nala or the chimney, is provided. A hollow mast is tall cylindrical member with a provision to store a gas energy at the bottom. Then water vessels, oil tanks were also housed at the center. At foot, electricity is stored in a container. It is described that the container will have three oils: Dhumanjana oil and Shukalandila oil and Pulakai or red asamic oil. And there is a ratio has been defined there. Then ignition of the oil mixture is by electric means, like in the modern jet engines. And description also indicates a hydraulic accumulator type of arrangement for storing a gaseous products. Ignition of oil is achieved by the combined process of electrical energy as well as friction. Actual thrust is obtained by passing the high energy produced through the a number of sundalas, or that is nothing but jet nozzles. And this seems to be the based on a Newton third principle, action and reaction equal and opposite. Same concept is used also in a modern aircrafts. Generation of electric power has also been briefly covered. It talks about 32 types of machine to produce electric power. So something strange. Different methods, broadly stated, are friction by thermal process, by waterfall, by combination of all these, and also by the solar rays. This technology is ascribed to Rishi Agastya in work in his work of Shakti Yantra. Here I would like to mention the real inventor of the battery DC power was really the Agastya Rishi. Thousands of years back itself, he has invented this and explained very clearly in his Shakti Yantra scripture. The electrical power production is described using four vessels located on four direction and central vessel. uh, the several types of acids, dravas are used in each vessels. Then central vessel forms the accumulator of the electricity generated. Then Anshupamani or solar rays absorbing crystals is the main medium that absorbs the heat that gets converted to electricity, the process of which is not clearly described. The process of storing the electricity by use of mercury has also been brought in, and stored electricity is conducted to all the parts of the Imana through the insulated cables for operating various services. Vata Prasarana Yantra is the one to generate main Udayama Shakti, that is a real lifting power. This yantra contains valves regulating inlet and outlet for fresh compressed or exhaust air, the advance, and describes and give the description or the hints of using the compressed air jet by obtaining the thrust. That like what we do in a modern aircraft. Similarly, let us study the energy system used in Rupini Imana and Tripura Imana. In a Rupini Imana also, utilization of electrical energy to operate electromechanical arrangement to enable Imana to lift off and accelerate is hinted. Tripura Vimana is a 3-in-1 Vimana built in operate ground, water, inside the water, and third is for flying in the air. This is close to hovercraft of the modern days of design, which will fly and run on the ground as well as in a water. From the study of Shakti or energy system used in above cited ancient aircraft reveals that they were using exhaustible energy like a combustible oil and non-exhaustible energies like wind energy as well as a solar energy. Now, jet propulsion system was extensively used in aircraft. The use of steam power to drive the compressor seems to be something strange, is unbelievable, since the steam generation during the flying itself is something strange. Use of Sun crystals is obviously for solar energy extraction. This solar energy employment for producing the electricity is a unique feature. Probably this technique was heard even by middle of 20th century. The use of solar energy for powering an aircraft is a unique phenomena here for the first time in the aviation technology. But in a recent past, I think many of you may be aware of it, and few enthusiastic innovators have produced aircraft, light aircraft, powered by the solar panel, and they could flew from one country to another country, and they established that whatever in Vedic scripture it is described, solar power can be used for the aircraft, and they have demonstrated practically that in the 21st century. Vedic scientists were also mastered the technique of solar energy for the weapon system, which is evident from the description of the Draudi Yantra. In this system, a mixing of rotary beam and solar rays and projecting the resultant energy on enemy planes as a lethal weapons, like electron beam or laser beam. With a laser, we can cut the metal itself. An electron beam, which is used in the modern technology for welding purposes of the aircraft parts, and where it will melt the metal itself. So that is what kind of technology was known to our ancient scientists. The resultant energy appears to possess a high heat content and therefore melts everything it projected upon. Ancient rishis had identified the mercury as a high energy potent material. Hoja in his in his Samudra Sutradhara, that's in the material science, he has written excellent book, and that state that a motive force is provided by a fire chamber with a mercury placed over the flame. So the power generated by the heated mercury helped by flapping of the wings by a rider inside causes the machine to fly through the air. Since the craft was equipped with the engine, one can speculate here that flapping of the wings is not as a main driving force of the propulsion system for the aircraft, but is basically for control the direction. It is for the navigation of the aircraft. So mercury vapor turbine engines are reported to use a liquid mercury and recycled in a closed circuit system, the consumption therefore being a negligible. That's called vapor mercury engines. The other distinct property of mercury is it is conductor of electricity and amplifies the sound waves. Briefly explaining the operation of this type of engine, Western researchers quoting this treatise mention this as a heating device placed underneath to cause ignition, triggering the potent energy in a mercury to drive the whirlwind in a motion. This produces highly intense impulse, catapulting the flying machine into the air instantaneously, like a helicopter. It's also interesting to note that the Sanskrit astronomical text entitled Surya Siddhanta mention Mercury engine used to provide a rotary motion for a Gola Yantra, a mechanical model of the planetary system. This suggests that at least another kind of Mercury engine was used to produce a rotary power. Text also says that the design for the Mercury engine is to be kept secret. It was standard practice in ancient India for a technical knowledge to be passed down to only from the teacher to the a trusted disciple. An unfortunate sequence of this is that knowledge tended to be lost whenever the oral tradition depending on the teacher and the disciple, were broken. That's how we lost quite a lot of important literature connected to the technology. It is thus the possible that many arts and science known in the ancient times have been lost to us, practically even without a trace of it. Another most sophisticated energy system and technology mastered our ancient rishi is anti-gravitational sci- science. It is greatly believed that this science was existed in India till the Indian Emperor Ashoka. Emperor Ashoka started a secret society of the nine unknown men, a great Indian scientist who were supposed to catalog the many of these sciences. Ashoka kept their work a secret because he was afraid that the advanced science categorized, cataloged by these men called from the ancient Indian sources would be used for the evil purpose of the war, which Ashoka himself was strongly against, having been a converted to Buddhism after defeating the rival army in a bloody battle. So, nine unknown men wrote a total of nine books, presumably on each one book they wrote, and these and this also contains a secret of gravitation. This book known to historians but not actually seen by them, a detail chiefly with the connecting with the gravity control. It presently is still around somewhere kept. It is believed presently somewhere kept in the secret library of India, Tibet, or elsewhere. One can certainly understand Ashoka's reasoning for wanting to keep such a knowledge a secret, assuming it exists. If Nazis had such weapons at their disposal during the World War II, Ashoka was also aware devastating wars using such advanced vehicles and other futuristic weapons that had destroyed the ancient Indian Rama Empire several thousand years before. Only a few decades ago is an interesting finding. Accidentally, it is found. The Chinese discovered some Sanskrit document of Lhasa in Tibet. When they were digging, military Chinese army was digging for some construction. They found out um, a copper plates and which is has written something in Sanskrit, and they sent them to University of Chandigarh. Fortunately, they did that. They didn't destroy it. They sent them to University of Chandigarh to be translated. At that point of time, one Dr. Ruth Raina of the university said, these documents contains the direction for building a interstellar spaceships. Their methods of propulsion, she said, was anti-gravitational and was based upon the system analogous to that of Laghima, the unknown power of the ego existing in a man's physiological makeup, a centrifugal forces strong enough to counteract the gravitational pull. According to Hindu yogis, this laghima which enable person to levitate. Dr. Raina said that on board these machines, which were called astras by the text, the ancient Indian could have sent the detachment of men on any of the planet according to the document, which is which thought to be a thousands of year old. Manuscripts were also said to reveal that secret of Antima, that's the cap of invisibility. And then Garima, that means how to become as heavy as a mountains of lead. Naturally, Indian scientists did not take the text very seriously as usual, but then became more positive about the values of them when the Chinese announced that they were including a certain parts of the data for a study in their space program. This was of the first instance of the government admitting to be researching on anti-gravity. The manuscript did not say definitely that interplanetary travel was ever made, but did mention of all the things planned trip to moons, though it is not clear whether this trip was actually carried out. However, one of the great Indian epics, that Ramayana, does have the highly detailed story in it of a trip to the moon in Imana. In fact, details of the battle on the moon with an Ashwin. This is a small bit of a recent evidence of anti-gravity and aerospace technology used by the ancient Indians. Similarly, it also appears from Bharadwaja Rishi's works on Vimana Shastra, wherein it is indicated that as a precaution for a long flights, a protection of the airship from the storm and lightning, and to know to switch the drive to solar energy from the free energy sources, which sounds like a anti-gravity. There seems to be no doubt that Imana were powered by some sort of anti-gravity. Imanas took off vertically and were capable of hovering in the sky like a modern helicopter. So Bharat Rishis, the wise, refers to no less than 70 authorities and 10 experts of air travel and antiquity. These sources are now lost, unfortunately. It also evident from Bharadwaj Rishi's works that Imana had a number of different propulsion sources, including combustion engines and even a pulse jet engines, which is a sort of a state of art of technology in the modern science. It is interesting to note that the Nazis developed the first practical pulse jet engines for their V-8 rocket boson bombs. Hitler and the Nazi staff were exceptionally interested in ancient India and Tibet and sent expeditions on both these places every yearly, stating that that is in the early 1930s, in order to gather such evidences that they did so. And perhaps it was from these people that Nazi gained some of the scientific information. According to the Dronaparva part of the Mahabharata and Ramayana, one Vimana described as a shape like a spear and borne along at a great speed on a mighty wind generated by Mercury. It moved like a UFO, going up and down, backwards, forward, as the pilot desired. In a Samarangana Sutradhara literature, that is scripture, it is described that Mercury did have something to do with a propulsion, or more possibly with a guidance system. Curiously, Soviet scientists have discovered what they call it as age-old instrument used in the navigation of cosmic vehicles in the caves of Turkestan and Gobi Desert. The devices are hemispherical object of a glass or a porcelain ending in a cone with a drop of a mercury inside. It is evident that Ancient Indians flew around these vehicles all over the Asia to Atlantis, presumably, and even apparently to South America also. According to another author of his paper on the ultimate frontier in articles, he wrote in 1966 itself, will actually where the first developed in Atlantis 20,000 years ago, and most common ones are a saucer shaped of a generally a trapezoidal cross section with hemispherical engine pods on the on its underside. They use a mechanical anti-gravity devices driven by engines developing approximately 80,000 horsepower. The article of another K.R. and Swami also mentioned that according to uh, the Vaimanic Shastra describes the detailed construction of what called as a Mercury vortex engine. The forerunner of this is the ion engines being made by the NASA. And this also he also adds that the additional information on the Mercury engine can be found in the ancient Vedic text called Samaranga Sutradhara. This text also devotes 230 verses to the use of machines in a space and war. NASA, world richest, most powerful scientific organization, is trying to create an ion engine. That is the device that uses the a stream of high velocity electrified particles instead of a blast of hot gases like in modern jet engines. Surprisingly, according to the bi-monthly ancient skies published in USA, the aircraft engines being developed for future use of the NASA by some strange coincidence also uses the Mercury bombardment units powered by solar cells, which was used by the ancient Vedic scientist. Interestingly, the impulse is generated in a seven stages. Mercury propellant is the first vaporized, fed into the thrust discharge chamber, ionized, converted into a plasma. As you know, plasma is the fourth state of matter by a combination with electrons, broke down electrically, and then accelerated through small openings in a screen to pass out to the engine at a velocity between 1,200 to 3,000 kilometers per minute. But so far, NASA has been able to produce an experimental basis only 1 pound of thrust by it. So power derivation virtually whatever they have developed virtually they're useless, but it is a something like a proof of concept. The Vedic scientists what they described it is possible. It's very interesting thing happened in India about 123 years ago. Many of you may be aware of it in open source literature or in social media about this incident. An Indian scientist or Sanskrit scholar by name is Talpade. He did extensive research on Bharada's Muni Vaimanik Shastra, and he was able to use our Vedic science of Imana, that is Vaimanik Shastra, to produce a sufficient thrust to lift his aircraft 1,500 feet to the air. He did this test on Bombay and Chowpatty seashore, and it could flew. This, of course, is unmanned. It could flew 1,500 feet and then fell into the sea. But this created a history. This created the proof that it is possible. Indian scientists, ancient Indian scientists, what they were talking about Vimana, what is practically possible. But British rulers at that time. It appeared in the press also. In fact, some of the old cuttings of that is available in the Times of India's cuttings on this incident was available in Melkote library. But British rulers at that time suppressed this fact, and rest of the world was not aware of this achievement at all. Not only that, in fact, they arrested the Talpade, and whatever he had documents and drawings, all that was confiscated. Then later, unfortunately or fortunately, later, 8 years later, or we Wright, that is Wright brothers, demonstrated on 17 December 1903 that uh, it was possible for a manned howler, that machine, to fly. And the first flight they did, and all the credit of the aircraft technology went to him, not to our ancient scientist. Some published literature also indicates that our ancient rishis were aware of the nuclear energy. This is one of the authors mentioned in his book that anti-gravity that Mahabharata is describing is nothing but an atomic war. Reference that he gives it like this are isolated, but battle using the fantastic array of weapons and aerial vehicles are common in all the epic of Indian books. What you see, one even describes Imana Malik's battle on the moon. The above section accurately describes what an atomic explosion would like and effects of the radioactivity on the population. Jumping into water is the only respite to say. Then John Burroughs, in his article, he mentioned that ancient Imana aircraft also said that many other terrible weapons were described quite authentically in the Mahabharata, but most fearsome of all is one used against the Vishnus. And this narrates that a Gurkha flying in his swift and powerful Imana hurled against the three cities of the Vishnus and, and Andakas a projectile charge with all the power of the universe. So, an incident, column of a smoke, it generated such a column of such a heat and smoke, fire. It's a brilliant as a 10,000 suns. It was 10,000 suns and rose in its all splendor. It was the unknown weapon, the iron thunderbolt, a gigantic messenger of death, which reduced to ashes the entire race of the Vishnus and Andakas. This narration looks very closer to the what has been observed in the 20th century of atomic explosion in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This proposition was further strengthened with latest finding of the modern times historian and scientist at the excavated archaeological uh, points and the Rishi city that is called Rishi city or Mohenjo-daro. They found that skeleton just lying in the street, some of them holding hands as if it's some great doom has suddenly occurred. And these skeletons are among the most radioactive ever found on the pair with those found in the hill at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The ancient cities whose bricks and stones walls have literally been petrified, that is, fused together, these found in the Mohenjo-daro. And this type of vitrification can only happen at a very high intensity, probably generated by the atomic explosion. He also draws the inferences that Atlantis and wiping out of Rama with atomic weapons Of course, they use different terminology Westerns there, but that's not important here. The world collapsed into the Stone Age of sorts, and modern history picks up a few thousand years later. Yet, it would seem that not all the Imanas and Black Seas of Rama and Atlantis were gone. Built to last for thousands of years, many of them would still be in use as evidenced by Ashoka, that is, nine unknown men, and the Lhasa manuscript says. In the great Indian epics like Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bhagavata Purana, many such incidents of application of subtle energy has been highlighted. Now we'll come to the another form of energy, that is a subtle energy. Dr. C. Kumar mentioned in his article one such example of the Mahabharata story in which Arjuna was offered a benediction by the a Gandharva named Chitranta. Although Chitranta owned a Vimana, here he is concerned with the horses. O best of men, I know, wish to offer each of you five brothers 100 horses of type bred by the Gandharva. The mounts of the gods and Gandharva exude the celestial fragrance, and they move at the speed of the mind. Even when their energy is spent, they do not diminish in their speed. See, this is something strange needs to be looked into that. And these Gandharva horses change the color at will and fly at the speed they desire. And simply by your desire, they will appear before you, ready to serve you. And indeed, these horses will always honor your wishes. It seems that these are the mystical horses that function according to the laws governed by the a subtle category of a material energy, not normal energy, subtle category of the material energy. The roadways on which they travel is a presumably of a similar nature, and the fact that they can travel vast distances on this road in a short time is due to the fact that they obey the laws governing the subtle energy rather than a laws governing the ordinary gross matter of what we talk in modern science. The fact that gross human body can be carried along such a road can understand in terms of the a mystic that the siddhis called a prapti or manojava. The basic idea is that a subtle laws include and supersede the gross laws. Gross matter obeying the familiar physical law is also obeying the subtle laws. But the same subtle laws can be applied to cause a gross matter to act in a way that violates the ordinary laws of physics. I'll quote one example, probably many of you will be aware of it. It's a practical demonstration, something like that. Even in the recent literature, we can find, even many of you must have read it, autobiography of Yogi, of Yogananda. He narrated one of such incident there. Whenever Yogananda meditate upon his Guru, Sri Yukteswar, and many times all the way from Himalaya, his Guru appears before him in a physical form in just fraction of a second. It was strange, but he could not question his Guru. He was always afraid how to question that. But he could not control. One day he asked his Guru, how you appear come all the way from Himalaya to my ashram in Los Angeles whenever I deeply, intensely meditate upon you, within a fraction of seconds you are before me. is interesting. Then his guru laughs at him. Yoganand, you were you were scientist in Purvashrama before becoming yogi. You were a lecturer in physics. You must know the science better than me. It's a very interesting dialogue. One must read that book. He says, and he blinks. He could not understand what it is, how it is, and he could not. Then he gives the clues. How much time it takes when sun rises and sun rays falls on your body, and that clue immediately it get the flash. Then then his guru explains. See, what is this body? This body consists of a millions of cells. Each cell has got energy. So all that energy is once again laws of conservation of energy of modern science. Only difference is in modern science there is a loss, but in Vedic science there is no loss. That is the difference. So I convert all these biological energy cells into light energy, then travel at the speed of light and come to your ashram and then reconvert all once again from light energy into this biological energy and into this body shape. And this is one of the example of the secret of ancient science. How he comes, how it is, what are the technology he follows? Yes, that is not revealed, but this is an example of another subtle energy. There is another interesting article by Dust Deltona that is on free energy physics. This is more relevant and very interesting. And if this follow this concept, like we look into seriously on this, probably will have abundant electricity across the globe. It gives the clues for that. Let's look into that. In his article, he says that ideas which are presented are coming from the mind of one man. The mind of this one man permeated by the sea of space, which is the repository of all the knowledge. The space, that is the vacuum, is filled with a sea of particles, and he called them as a Zion. The Zion flux is responsible for the Brownian motion and 0 point energy and for energy fluctuations. Isotropic Zion flux moves at the speed of light. The Zion interact with the matter only slightly enough to cause a Brownian motion and a heat transfer. Zion is elemental particle principle is not perfect. It contains the defect of weight or a mass, which makes a momentum transfer a possible. Is the principle that is the principal property is the memory. Of course, modern times, many of you must maybe for working in space science maybe know that there is a similar way that is called memory alloys, where certain alloys retain the memory and re-exhibit when subjected to certain stress and temperature. And this is the epsilon remembering the material space it has just passed through and retain the impression for the given quantized relaxation time depending on the strength of the impression. So he also says that energy absorbed by the hysteresis of the space, which was also observed by Tesla, one of the great modern scientists, or imperfection of the Zion interaction. He says Zion hypothesis offers two great advantages. The first is the free energy, and second is the result of wish of the desirer, the formulator of the experiment. First hypothesis of free energy is energy is only created or destroyed and is not converted from one form to another, contrary to modern science. Many things it will start contradicting our modern science. He also says if all the energy liberating processes of the material world are considered as drawing their energy from the free energy field of space. Then amount of work was expanded in a liberating, and this energy becomes a result of the a perfection of our ideas in the solution of an experiment. That is the production of energy. He also says the electrical generator does not convert the mechanical input to an electrical result, contradiction to the modern science. Gasoline engine does not convert the latent heat of combustion of the fuel to visible work energy, contradiction. The fuel which burned is a result of the imperfection of the process for the recovery of energy in this manner from the space, and which are all contradictory to the principles of a modern science. This literature also highlights that a perfect electrical generator would reflect understanding of the material universe to the extent that energy liberation process would be materialized, that is constructed in a material form, which would not consume itself or alter as a result of the energy which was being liberated from the free energy substrate. He also claims that a proof of this idea resides in the nuclear machine, a space power generator being simultaneously developed in USA and also in Indian Nuclear Power Board laboratories, that is in our own state in Karwar, Karnataka. I don't know how he got it, but that he documents that. The Xeon is so named because it coincides with the intelligent part of the reality, and he calls the mind. The mind is a result of it, and it is a result of the mind. Mind is a result of it, and it is a result of the mind. A descriptive reality can take us no further than this. He says the man role as a creator can only be elaborated through the resolution of a discipline and related forms. Result of the experiment is what man wanted, so he must perfect his own principle and dissolve his thought, which is what we make into reality, man and his machine. He also gives a possible thought a free energy society could create anything it wanted. Is there any relation between the free energy concept postulated by this author with that of the Vedic science of the ancient rishis, who used to produce anything at will from the space? This is what is mind blowing. This aspect needs a further study and deep investigation. Here, the article of Mr. Toby highlights that Mr. Nicholas Tesla, a well-known Western scientist, also advocated the Vedic science concept of a free energy. It's very interesting now. Carefully listen now. As you know, Tesla is well known for his famous arc lighting, the alternating current of motor, power generation, transmission system, and electrical conversion and distribution by the oscillator discharge. See, whatever today we are enjoying, electricity and its derivatives, it is because of Teslas. In 1891, however, Tesla patented what one day may become his most famous invention. It is the basis for a wireless transmission of electrical power and is known as a Tesla coil transmission. Also, as early as in 1891, Tesla described universe as a kinetic system filled with energy. This is what a Vedic scientist also say, filled with energy which could be harnessed at any location. Mr. Nikola Tesla's came in contact with Swami Vivekananda. This is the turning point for him. Meeting with Swami Vivekananda greatly stimulated Tesla's interest in Vedic science and philosophy. Mrs. Tesla was charmed to hear from Swami Vivekananda about Vedantic prana, akasha, and kalpas, which, according to him, are the only theories of modern science can entertain. And this can be demonstrated mathematically that force and matter are reducible to potential energy. That's what he gave the interpretation is the Vivekananda. Brahman is the absolute. Mahat is the Ishvara, a formal, a creative energy. Prana and Akasha are the energy and the matters. The Brahman is defined as one self existent, impersonal spirit, the divine essence, from which all the things emanate, by which they are sustained, and by which they return back. Ishvara is the supreme ruler, the highest possible conception of absolute, which is beyond all the thought. Maha means literally the great one and is also interpreted as a meaning a universal mind or cosmic intelligence. Prana means energy, life force, and Akasha means a matter, that's the ether. It appears from the literature that Tesla continued to study the Hindu and Vedic philosophy for a number of years. He closely interacted on this aspect with another great scientists like William S. Thomson, Lord Kelvin, and Einstein, Walter Russell, etc., who were also influenced by Vedic science and philosophy projected by Swami Vivekananda. All of them had in contact with Vivekananda. He was influenced by them. Kelvin had endorsed Tesla's theories and proposed a system for a wireless transmission of electrical power. Very interesting. Although Tesla did not accept many of the tenets of relativity and quantum theory and never made a connection between the matter and the energy. He did recognize the possibility of free energy as demonstrated by the following statements. He got this free energy concept from the Vedic science. Can a man control the grandest, most inspiring of all the processes of nature? If he could do this, he would have powers almost unlimited and supernatural. He could cause planes to collide and produce his own suns and stars, his heat and light. He could organize and develop a life in all the infinite forms. Such powers would place him besides his creator, makes him fulfilled his ultimate destiny. This was his statement. We see that Teresa is asking this question. This is a question and speculating and searching for an answer. Of course, he could not find a full answer in his lifetime. If Tesla had developed a free energy source or learned how to manipulate space, time, and gravity during the time of his most public and productive years, that is, until about 1920, he would have had answers to all these questions. It is evident from these studies, Tesla's study and research on free energy concept similar to the free energy physics given in Vedic science. That's most important one has to take away. The free energy device proposed by Tesla, based on the concept of Vedic science, would have revolutionized the socio-economic status quo on a planet Earth if that it had support to develop a basic free energy science in a usable technology. Electric power would have been available many part of the globe abundantly, no shortage at all. But according to Mr. Toby, he was not allowed by denying the financial support for the project by the vested interest industries and the people. Okay, let me try to what I looked at the studied literature when Tesla went to with this project to start this an industry. J.P. Morgan, they were also the great financier those days, even today, and they were happy. They immediately said, "Yes, we'll fund this. It's a fantastic revolutionize the whole energy system in the world." But then, when they heard the electrical industry, whom the J.P. Morgan had funded, like power generation systems or electric motor manufacturers or distribution companies, and all the JP Morgan had funded. They all came together to JP Morgan. They said, if you fund Tesla's proposal, then we'll not be able to refund you uh, billions of dollars which you have funded us for our projects. Then he realized what impact it will make to the people. Then immediately he told Tesla that sorry, I will not able to fund you this for this project. But there is an article which published Tesla's co-scientist who worked along with him. He had published. He has documented that, saying that he was disappointed. Documented saying that this is the technology of the East. Present circumstances I must have been suppressed, but the day is not far off. One day or other, technology of East will become the reality. That is, technology of the East means he was referring to the science technology of ancient India. That will become reality. Probably we can, maybe in subsequent lecture, I can throw some light on that, how it has become reality. In this context, I thought I would just give you this additional input. Similarly, other Western scientists such as Baden John Bedin and also worked on the free energy devices based on the free energy physics of the very science. And from this literature indicates that the ancient rishis were knowing how to generate abundant energy and power. The present day scientists and the scholars need to re-engineer this lost science. This is very much relevant to the whole world. This requires. And this is where two of the Indian engineers took a clue and started doing research on our ancient science. They have dedicated their life for this research, more than 3 to 4 decades of the intense research brought them to the some prototype level of producing the system and which could be proved that it is a reality, not something assumption. Probably I will stop here. So that I will continue further. Maybe in the further, I will next week lecture. I will give two interesting case studies. How this ancient Indian technology has been re-engineered at a prototype level into a product, and it is left to the whole world how that can be made to harness that for the benefit of the mankind, setting up an industry and producing those. Thank you very much. So I will stop here. So let's look forward for the next week, and I'll take it forward on this subject. Thank you very much.